All right, let's get right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to look at something you do every single day, but probably never really think about on a microscopic level. You've probably heard the saying that any walking is better than no walking. And sure, technically, that's true. But honestly, it's kind of the least useful version of the truth. It's right up there with eat your vegetables. It's a half-truth that skips over the most fascinating question of all. At what exact threshold does walking actually begin producing the specific biological changes that prevent disease, protect your brain, and extend your life? So today we're going to break down the exact minute-by-minute biology of walking for 10 minutes versus walking for 30 minutes.
So, what really changes inside your body between a 10 and a 30-minute walk? This is the core question we need to answer. Because for years, we've been absolutely obsessed with this total step count myth. The idea that as long as you hit some magic number by the time your head hits the pillow, you're perfectly fine. But what if I told you that the continuous duration of your walk is a completely independent predictor of your health? We're going to look at precisely what happens inside your body when you cross from that 10-minute mark into 30 minutes, and why crossing those specific thresholds completely changes the category of biology you're accessing.
Okay, 33,560. This massive number really frames everything we're about to discuss. It comes from a landmark study published in the Annals of Internal Medicine back in October 2025, put together by Del Pozo Cruz, Amadi, and their colleagues over at the University of Sydney. They analyzed data from 33,560 UK biobank participants just to figure out exactly how our daily walking patterns actually affect our long-term health outcomes.
What they did was pretty brilliant. The researchers compared two groups of people who were taking the exact same number of total steps every day. Group 1 got their steps in short, fragmented bursts. Think pacing around the office, walking to the fridge, that sort of thing. Group 2 accumulated most of their daily steps in continuous bouts of 10 to 15 minutes or longer in a single stretch. The result? The people walking in continuous 10 to 15-minute bouts reduced their risk of cardiovascular disease by up to 2/3 compared to the fragmented group. Now remember, this isn't comparing walkers to people just sitting on the couch. It's comparing people taking the exact same amount of steps. It turns out that continuous duration is the magic key.
Section 1. The 10-minute foundation. Opening the door.
The literal second you take your first few steps, multiple systems in your body fire up all at once. Within just the first 2 to 3 minutes, your heart rate rises, your overall body temperature goes up a bit, and your cardiac output increases. But the absolutely critical thing happening here is that your blood starts flowing through your arteries at a much higher velocity. This rapid flow creates a physical friction, what scientists call shear stress, on the endothelial cells lining your blood vessel walls.
So why do we care about shear stress? Well, it activates an absolute biological superpower called endothelial nitric oxide synthase. I know, it's a mouthful, but think of it as a master switch. This enzyme produces a nitric oxide signal that basically tells your arteries to stay flexible, and it makes them highly resistant to inflammatory damage. Whether you're out there for 10 minutes or 30 minutes, you are turning on this incredible protective mechanism within the very first few minutes of your walk.
And while your arteries are getting healthier, your muscles are getting to work too. A 2019 randomized controlled trial in cell metabolism showed that even these short bouts of movement produce highly measurable improvements in clearing glucose from your blood. Taking just a 10-minute walk after a meal activates these things called GLUT4 transporters. The amazing part, this pathway clears circulating blood sugar right into your muscle tissue to be burned as energy, completely independent of insulin. You are literally intercepting your post-meal blood sugar peak just by walking for 10 minutes. Take that, lunchtime sandwich.
I really want to make sure you take this point away from our first section. 10 minutes is genuinely protective. It is not nothing. Based on research from the British Journal of Sports Medicine and that massive University of Sydney dataset, 10 to 15 minutes of continuous walking is the exact baseline threshold where your cardiovascular risk reduction becomes highly statistically significant. So if 10 minutes is literally all you have time for today, do it every single day. It's the biological minimum that opens the door to heart benefits, blood sugar management, and even mood regulation.
Section 2. The 30-minute difference. Walking through the rooms.
Now, by pushing your walk just an extra 20 minutes, you undergo this spectacular biological level up. You literally cross 5 distinct thresholds when you hit that 30-minute mark. Let's break down exactly what each of these means for your health, starting right up in your brain.
Threshold 1 is sustained BDNF elevation. BDNF stands for brain-derived neurotrophic factor. You can basically think of it as miracle fertilizer for your brain. It drives neurogenesis, which is the creation of brand new neurons in your hippocampus, and it heavily protects you against cognitive decline over time. Now, sure, A 10-minute walk produces a tiny bit of a BDNF response, but a 2025 Brain Sciences systematic review out of the University of Cambridge confirmed that getting a truly significant elevation of this molecule requires sustained, moderate-intensity movement for about 20 to 30 minutes.
Think of BDNF like water pressure, building up in the pipes of a large house. A 10-minute walk is kind of like running a tap on the first floor. It produces some flow, you're building a slight amount of pressure. But a continuous 30-minute walk builds that pressure high enough that the water finally reaches every single room all the way up to the top floor. The stem cells in your hippocampus are just waiting for that biological pressure to reach them. 10 minutes begins to build it, but you really need that 30 minutes to deliver it fully.
Threshold 2 is where your metabolism makes a massive shift. See, in the first 10 to 12 minutes of a walk, your body is mostly just burning the ATP stored right in your muscles, along with glucose from glycogen. But as you push past minute 15 and head toward 30, your insulin falls and that glycogen gets drawn down. That's when fat oxidation steps in as your dominant fuel source. In fact, a 2014 British Journal of Nutrition meta-analysis found that 30 minutes of walking, especially if you do it in a fasted state, is a categorically different fat-burning event compared to just stopping at 10 minutes.
Next up, we cross into threshold 3, the post-exercise metabolic window. This is driven by something called EPOC, excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. When you just walk for 10 minutes, your metabolic rate drops right back to its baseline pretty quickly, but after 30 minutes, your body has to work overtime to restore oxygen, clear out lactate, and repair minor muscle turnover. This creates this incredible metabolic window where you actually experience sustained caloric burn and fat oxidation that lasts for 2 to 3 hours after your walk is completely over. A quick 10-minute stroll just cannot reliably trigger that kind of prolonged burn.
Moving right along into threshold 4, we see deep cellular maintenance. Prolonged moderate-intensity aerobic exercise turns on a really cool biological signal called AMPK. As your exercise duration stretches toward that 30-minute mark, this AMPK signal strengthens progressively. What it does is effectively initiate autophagy, which is your body's internal cellular recycling program. You are literally triggering your own cells to clean house, clear out the junk, and repair themselves. And as you can imagine, that is absolutely vital for healthy aging.
Finally, we reach threshold 5, which is true structural cardiac efficiency. A 10-minute walk gives your heart a nice, healthy stimulus. But if we look at the American Heart Association guidelines, building actual structural cardiovascular efficiency requires a sustained aerobic stimulus. When you hit 30 minutes regularly, week over week, you are literally training your heart muscle to increase its stroke volume and reduce your resting heart rate. You aren't just moving, you're building a structurally stronger engine for your body.
Section 3. The honest verdict. Putting it all together.
So here's the reality. 10 minutes and 30 minutes aren't just good and better. They actually unlock entirely different biological realities within you. Both durations are going to give you that great glucose clearance, but look closely at the sheer stress signal. 10 minutes gives your arteries a brief signal, while 30 minutes sustains it long enough for real arterial adaptation. And when we start looking at dominant fat oxidation, full neurogenesis for your brain, and that incredible 2 to 3 hour EPOC afterburn window, 10 minutes simply says no, while 30 minutes proudly says yes.
If you take only one single thing away from this explainer today, let it be this. 10 minutes opens the door, but 30 minutes walks through it into every room. If you are currently someone who walks 10 minutes a day, do not stop. You have successfully opened the door and you are producing real, measurable cardiovascular protection. But you've got to know that there are 5 incredible biological rooms sitting just beyond that door, simply waiting for you to extend your time.
So I really want to hear from you on this. Are you currently a 10-minute walker trying to work your way toward 30? Or are you a 30-minute walker who just realized exactly how much incredible, invisible biology you've been producing this whole time? Let me know down in the comments. And be sure to tune in to our next explainer, where we're going to uncover the specific mechanism of how 30 minutes of walking produces blood pressure reductions that actually rival first-line antihypertensive medications. It's fascinating stuff. Until then, keep walking and let your biology run at the level it was designed to.